Good morning, everyone. As I said, I'm Newman, so I'm head of the Longitudinal Study and Development Team at ONS. So our role in maintaining the ONS Longitudinal Study for England and Wales is that we are the data controllers and the data processors, and we prepare the ONS Longitudinal Study data for researchers, and then we work alongside the Census team in providing support to users of the LS. As I'm sure many of you know, we're currently working to link 2021 census data, and we started the start of the ONS Longitudinal Study was the 1971 census. So what we're actually doing is we're bringing up a 50-year window on the population of England and Wales. Now, what I'm planning to cover today, just very briefly at the beginning, just a little bit of a reflection on that 50-year period, so how society in England and Wales has changed between 1971 and 2021. I'll then we'll share some information about the 2021 census and move on to look at some specific questions from the census as well, and what questions we have and what questions may have changed from census to census. A very brief update then on how we're doing, so the 2021 census data, and then finally part of the work we do to link the census data is to hold a deep test data where we people to come and use the data as our final stage of testing. I'll share some information about that process and make you aware of how we, if you may want to that process. Just quickly then to reflect on the 50 years. Now, I'm going to apologise because it's a slightly bigger screen, so I am going to have to read out some of the certainly when we get to the screenshots of the questionnaire. So this is census data from 1971, just population size and age distribution compared to 2021. So this is the one set of the first release of census data that we released back in June. This is all we have released so far in terms of census data with population counts by age and sex. And just looking at that, you can see over the 50-year period that the ONS has been running, the population in England and Wales has increased by something like 11 million. And then, no surprise to anyone, but the age distribution of that population over that 50-year period. The orange bars, you can see, are larger over to the right-hand side than the purple bars. And if you look at the extreme right-hand side, we're now saying approximately 5% of the population in England and Wales are aged 80 or over, compared to about 2% in 1971. So an aging population, that's not news to anyone really. A lot of these people in the 80+ groups, some when we get the 2021 census, 6 data points stated for those people across that period. One of the things you're actually going to the population 880 and over has gone from 10%, but then obviously population 11 million people as well. So actually that's there's about 3 times as many people aged 80 in 2021 as there in 1971. As I say, my census colleagues will want me to make very clear on the next slide, none of these graphs are census data because none of these topics has had data published on it yet. But I just wanted to put out some other examples of things that we know have changed significantly over the last 50 years and might be of interest to you when we get the 2021 census. So, education, 71. It's about some initial details around what I need to find out now in 1971. The middle graph shows migration. The purple thing is inward migration, the blue line is outward migration. 71 is kind of back here somewhere, so both in migration and out migration, and the population shown has increased significantly since 1971. And then the last chart, I just wanted to show something to cover essentially the change in the economy and the labour market that's happened since 1971, so back in the 70s. This was figures from the industry itself, but there was something like 200,000 people in the steel industry. And by the time we get into the 2000s, obviously we're down around 10, 20,000. And that's just indicative of the UK is moving from heavy kind of industry to a more service-based economy. So that's the sort of thing that has happened in the 50 years up to 2021. Now, just to focus on the census itself, and a reminder, and I hope you all took part in the census. Census day was the 21st of March last year. You probably remember it was during one of the COVID lockdowns. And when you come to use the data, I think whether that be census data or the census data in the longitudinal study, it's going to be very useful to kind of bear that in mind, because that will have had an impact certainly on some of the variables if you think about work location, travel to work, makeup of households and things like that. There will be things that are special to the census as a result of the pandemic. The big news story for us, the 97% response rate exceeded expectations, exceeded the kind of threshold we set ourselves for a successful census. We were very, very happy with that, and that's good news for LS users as well. It means that 97%, the LS sample should be there as well. It was the first digital first census. And so of the people who did respond, just under 90% of people responded online. Now, you could respond online and join the learning census, but something like 85% still responded. They were 15% responded online. This time, that's more than 50 in a way. And there is quality you get from people put their answers straight into the database issues you get around handwriting on a written form, that having to go through a scanner and the interpretation, the character recognition issues you get with scanners. So the data quality in terms of question response should be better. The data quality in terms of people responding to the right questions should be better as well, because the online system steers you through which question you should answer next, given your answer to the earlier question, whereas previously you rely on people to understand and interpret instructions about how they do question 24 and all that sort of thing. We do know from the 2011 census there are other data policy issues that can arise, which seem to be a result of people responding on a keyboard. So some dates, some transpose was within dates and things like that. So there are, it's not all one way, there are kind of data policy issues that can arise from online response. We published our first results on the 28th of June this year, so census figures, that's population by age and sex, by local authority, and then nationally. And just at the national level, in the last decade, since the 2011 census, there have been a 6.3% rise in the population of England and Wales to 59.6 million. The last, I won't be down for the last minute, but that's between October and the end of the year. There's a whole load of univariate topic summaries that are being published by ONS covering various topics, migration, national identity, and so on. So just to then focus on what might be of interest to LS users from the 2021 census. You might be able to read this one, but the next one or two starts to be a bit tricky. There are three topics that we've covered for the first time in the 2021 census. Question 26 was about sexual orientation, question 27 about gender identity, question 32 about whether people had served in the UK, obviously what we refer to as the veterans question. Just to point out, the first two of those, sexual orientation and gender identity, were voluntary. So if you didn't want to provide an answer to that question, you didn't have to. But one thing to bear in mind, if you do want to use that within your research, they're obviously very sensitive topics, and there will come down to be a certain level of additional scrutiny around ethics about any kind of research that we to use those topics. Really, on the veterans question, it's not that detailed. It's just whether you were previously in regular or reserve armed forces. Obviously, what you can do, the longitudinal study, is possibly trace those people or take those people back to an earlier census where you might find a bit more information about them when they were actually serving in the armed forces. So those are the questions asked for the first time. In 2011, we also had some questions asked for the first time. So 2021 is the first opportunity to look at individuals transitioning from census to the next. And I think we're going to struggle to redo actually, so I will be through them up. I'll come back to the two on the left later. The question, well, in each case here on the left side, excuse me, within the dotted line, we'll see two questions. The top one is the 2011 question, the bottom one is the 2021 equivalent. So a question about national identity, we asked that for the first time in 2011. We've asked again in 2021. What we've done is that the order of the response to previously was English, Welsh, Scottish, Northern Irish, and British, and in 2021 we've elevated British to the top of the list. So I think there would be interest in whether people had changed their national identity over the last decade, given various things that have happened. You will need to take into account that the ordering of the responses changed, because I think that could have an effect on response to that question as well. We asked about language for the first time in 2011. So, what is your main language? And then also your proficiency with the English language. And that's exactly the same question this time around. What might be interesting is to see people whose main language wasn't English last time, whether many people agreed to start using English as their main language, and also their proficiency. Can we see that people's proficiency in English has improved over the decade? And then question here on the right is about passports. You'll see a theme here. In the 2011 census, it was used as an opportunity to try and gather quite a lot more information about sort of migration, ethnicity, identity, those sorts of topics, because the expansion of the EU in 2004 kind of changed the picture in lots of the migration flows. The 2011 census was a chance to try and capture a bit more information to understand how migration had been impacting on society. So the passports helped. Now the interesting there is we asked about UK passports, foreign passports or other. Where that might be interesting is obviously within the last decade, the UK is in the EU, and there is not just anecdotal evidence, there is evidence that the take up of Irish passports by people living in the UK has increased significantly since that. So that might be interesting to use to see whether we can understand anything about what sorts of people have been applying for passports. The two questions on the left are probably slightly less interesting. It's just asking about when did you last arrive in the UK if you were born abroad, how long you're intending to stay in the UK. Then we have some other questions where it's not that they were asked for the first time in 2011, but things have changed between 2011 and 2021. So the question on the left is what we typically refer to as the marital status question or relationship status question. In 2011, it was the first census since civil partnerships were introduced. So civil partnerships came in for the first time, but only for same-sex couples. By 2021, you've got civil marriages available to mixed couples and opposite couples. So the question had to change as a result of that. And what it actually asks this time is what's your marital status, and then a follow-up question about whether that's someone of the same with someone who's sex or someone of the opposite sex. Question about caring, which has been used quite a lot in our achievements looking for research. The question this time is a greater number of options, so it's kind of looking up around the people provide unpaid care for down into kind of 10-hour blocks. So that would be interesting. I'm sure people will use that. Ethnic group, a couple of changes on the ethnic groups. Rubber, so in 20 category in 21, and also for Black African group, we ask people writing, so they were African background, we ask them to writing. Yeah. And then questions about long-term experience. It's been in the census a few times now, and this is traditionally how as your identifying activities for the health problem or disability. The previous use just asked about whether you have essentially legal long-term illness. So yes, limited or yes, limited a little or no. This time we've broadened down what the actions. So we've asked, do you have any physical or mental health condition or illnesses? Asked the yes, asked 12 months or more. So that would have people who do the party for who illness or the condition doesn't have any kind of any limitation. So you could have high blood pressure or asthma or something that will manage you well. There's also other qualifications, I think, changes every time you have a census. There's changes around occupation and work questions and things like that as well. Okay, so each bear in mind that you'll need to take into account. I just want to give a brief update on where we are working today. The 2021 census data. This, in terms of working my team, this is 1 10 years. You think that's significant we do. We're progressing thousands of data annually. July, stay to census and something we're talking something that's really just a justification. But take a bit of time to go and work this through and make the quality side. And if I have to the work stage, making sure we do all the processing we need to do, and then we kind of flip round to think about right now we need to create a research database and what things people want and need, what variables do they want within the data. So we've pretty much completed the stage one. We work with an organisation called ONS Longitudinal Study to link the data, and all of that's worked really well. But we've got one piece of work that we haven't anticipated, which is causing us not problems, but something additional that we need to work with at the moment. And that's that when we release the 2021 census data, we want the life events, the births and deaths related data to be brought up to the same day. And the processing system that we've used for that up to 2019 is no longer available to us. So we're having to work out how we're going to do that with the services that are now available to us. And we're still working through that, which means we can't be clear about where we see them. Yeah, that's dependent on that final solution to that issue. In terms of stage 2, that's really what we're starting to turn in place and do now through events like this and others. You will be, we've got lots of multiples in there. We need to sort of work through all of those out. We'll be talking Celsius and agreeing what content. We've got so many variables in the census, we don't bring them all into the research database, so there'll be a bit of selection happening there. Data dictionary content and applications we need to sort out. Testing. So we have 2 stages of testing. One is my team looking at logical consistency checks over time and things like that. When we think we've got data set ready to be used, we take the cautious approach and do one which is to say, can we have some researchers volunteering to come and use data just in case there's anything that picks up that we missed. And then when the beta testing is complete, we move to having a release date and a launch event, which we typically do. Last time we did it collectively as across the 3 studies. So just to finish and return to the beta testing part of this, the question marks down here, the issue I mentioned earlier, we're not absolutely certain when we actually have a data set there and ready for people to beta test with. But what that doesn't stop us doing is actually going through the initiation part of this and looking to recruit people who want to do beta testing. So we're going to run that project selection process and get a set of beta projects, and then we'll communicate closely with them and maintain the data is going to be available. And I'll time I'll have shortly about what the criteria are. But the timetable is that we're looking to open applications in December. And new in January. we'll send my new year will be made for Scotland. We will then hold a selection panel meeting in February, and then we hope we'll have the data maybe ready around the middle of 2023. We allowed a 6-month window for beta testing to run last time, so we may be looking for late 2023 and early 2024 before the beta stage is complete. We're launching the mixing data. Why do a beta test? Well, to appeal to your altruistic nature, you'll be playing a very significant part in making sure the quality of the LS data is the best it can possibly be, and we're investing in doing that. And it contributes to the wider value of the census as a data set as well. We're a very key kind of census output and census-based research. What you get out of it, you get early access. You don't have the understanding of the new data, so you kind of have a 6-month head start on non-beta testers. So at that point, with the research that you've worked on in that 6-month window, you're able to publish as we launch the data. So selection criteria, just gone through these. So to be successful, projects it must have a longitude development. We're not kind of people don't use the LS just for kind of cross-sectional data projects. There's other census products for that. We're looking for each project to include at least one experienced LS user. We think those people are more likely to identify flaws in the data. But we would encourage experienced LS users to then partner up with some more inexperienced users and try and kind of increase the pool of regular LS users. Imputation is a statistical process that Census used to populate the data, and we're looking for people to do an evaluation of that. If you're looking for projects to not just look at England and Wales, but look at the England and Wales as well. And just the bottom line is just to acknowledge that actually for anyone to gain access to LS data, whether normally or in the beta test, you need to successfully negotiate approved census data project approval. And then across the portfolio, these are the topics we would like to see covered across all of them. So that will be considerations when we're assessing projects, is trying to make sure we cover all of these. The new questions, migration and mobility questions, international migration questions, identity and ethnicity questions, and so on, household composition. Really affected by the pandemic, and maybe anecdotal, but people need to live past their families in the duration of the lockdown. Always interested in occupation coding and the social class variables derived from that. Health, limiting long-term illness, caring, and again caring, did that pandemic have an impact there? And then we're also interested in people, particularly this time, looking at the mortality variables, because we would have used a slightly different method for 2021, and we need to make sure that has come up with consistent data to how we processed that previously. Just yeah. I mean the census 97% response rate every really. And as I say, it needs for more people respond to the LS. So now we do have this one issue, we now need to just kind of and really just give all the piece. That's our email address, always have to receive emails. That's our web link. Don't be put off by the paid services element in it. You don't pay for the LS, it's just it's on the website. And we will be publishing information links from that page. Thanks.